your superpower. For brands to thrive while remaining relentlessly relevant and sharply differentiated, they have to stop striving for perfection. Exposing yourself to the possibility of failure, criticism, or harm may actually be good for your brand. In her keynote, our speaker will make the case for vulnerability as an imperative for brands and as a mindset to be embraced by the entire organization. Please put your hands together and join me in welcoming Lulu Raghavan, Managing Director, Landor Fitch. She is a highly respected global leader and expert in brand transformation across industries. As the Managing Director of Landor Fitch India, she leads a large team of creators and strategists focused on delivering strategic brand and design solutions for clients. With over 2 decades of experience in brand management and performance, Lulu is recognized as a thought leader in her field, with her opinions sought by clients, colleagues, and industry peers alike. In addition to her leadership role at Landor Fitch, Lulu is an accomplished speaker and commentator, regularly addressing brand and design conferences worldwide. Let's put our hands together and please welcome our keynote speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, we have with us Lulu Raghavan.
Thank you so much. I was wondering if I had the graveyard shift. You know, when Tanya was telling me, your presentation is going to get moved, I wasn't really sure that was a good thing, but hopefully everyone has eaten, satiated, and you're ready to broaden your perspective on a topic. So let me start by asking, if we can have the presentation, please. Okay, how many of you are curious about the notion of vulnerability? Raise your hand. A few of you? How many of you can define it precisely? Raise your hand. We have no risk takers here for defining vulnerability. Okay, Sunita, I won't test you. And how many of you really believe that vulnerability can be your superpower? Come on, show of hands. Awesome. So I think I don't have that much of a difficult task. But good afternoon again, everyone. My name is Lulu Raghavan. I'm the Managing Director of Landor Fitch. And in the next 15 minutes, I'm hoping to broaden your perspective on vulnerability as a powerful tool for companies and for personal brands as well. Though the personal brand bit is a topic for another day. Today, we'll talk about why organizations should think very seriously about vulnerability and whether their cultures foster it or not, because it can make a huge difference to the success of your brands and therefore your business. I'd love to start today with a quote from a Japanese artist, thinker, and critic who in the 1800s believed that in order to live a very fulfilling life, you needed to constantly readjust, to scan the surroundings, to keep evolving. Just like an artist keeps refining his work or her work, it's never quite done. The imperative for us is to embrace imperfection, to never think it's quite there, but to be okay, but to keep evolving. To lay emphasis on flexibility, to truly have resilience, and to be very open to change as well. These are all elements that Kokuzo or Kukara remind us of. This spirit is the absolute need of the hour. And why am I saying this? I think we'll all agree that the world has been totally transformed. In fact, I think for more than 50 years, every article or every report has started with how much change there has been. But I think you'll agree with me that in the past 2 years, that technological change has accelerated like never before. Digital transformation is in the boardroom agenda. Now, sustainability is a new imperative as well. And companies are thinking about sustainability not just as compliance, but competitive advantage for brands. And of course, all of us have experienced the pandemic and how it completely shifted consumer behaviors and categories, accelerated some behaviors and decelerated others. Our clients are asking us, how do we navigate these mammoth changes? What's the role of brand in all of this? In fact, you'd probably be in the statistic, 75% of firms expect to increase the types of major change initiatives that they'll undertake in the next 3 years. A Gartner report says this. And what kind of changes are we really talking about? They run the gamut from digital transformation that we talked about, M&A, spin-offs, venturing into adjacent categories, go-to-market strategies. And all of them are in the service of creating products, services, new partnerships, and collaborations for a younger and younger cohort of customers. Millennials, Gen Zs, Gen Alphas. Not only are these the customers, but they are your employees as well. Somebody earlier, I think Amit Jain, talked about how employees are also getting younger and younger and younger. So what is the commonality between these younger cohorts of customers as well as employees? They value human-centric brands. They seek authenticity, came up again earlier today, transparency, which was referenced in the first presentation, true value, and human centricity. These are a tribe, these are cohorts that can sniff fakeness from a mile. They truly want to see your real side. They don't want perfection. They want authenticity. And they are disavowing brands that act perfect and think they are know-it-all, right? So in this world, what got us here is not going to get us there. And we all dream of being that unicorn, of disrupting a market, of chasing market share. So what can we do? I truly believe that in this journey, vulnerability can actually be a very trusted ally and your superpower. So what do we mean when we say vulnerability? Actually, Merriam-Webster's, the dictionary says, vulnerability means capable of being physically or emotionally wounded, open to attack. Think of vulnerability as acts of exposing yourself to the possibility of criticism, of failure, of harm. Actually, Brené Brown, who's the world's expert on vulnerability, tells us that what we all believe, and I'm sure many of us in this room believe, that vulnerability is not a weakness. That myth is profoundly dangerous. Actually, vulnerability is the birthplace of innovation, of creativity, and change. How many of you believe this or can resonate with it? Right? It's two sides of the same coin. What does this mean in the business context? How do we embrace vulnerability and make it work for our business? It's about being more open, more risk-taking. It's about more courage, more bravery, more creativity, and more authenticity as well. At Landor Fitch, we see the world through a brand lens. And if you're crazy about brand valuation and how it impacts the business value, we see that organizations that put brand at the center derive value in two fundamental ways: by driving the brand deeply into the culture and by manifesting the brand in the experience for all stakeholders. So today, I'd like to pose to you 3 ways in which you can deploy vulnerability and embrace it fully in your organization. Number 1, define the brand in the boldest possible terms. I'm going to come to this. Amit Jain also talked about brand purpose. And I'm really happy he already sold you in on the importance of brand purpose. And of course, we have a lot of work research which also shows us the importance of it. The second imperative is to embed vulnerability deeply in organizational culture. This is difficult to do, but can we take inspiration from others who've done it? And the third, more exciting one, there are lots of people from media here as well, drive bold breakthrough innovation in the experience. So let's quickly look at these 3 areas. So the first one is defining the brand in the boldest possible terms as possible. This is your North Star, your brand purpose. A very famous example is Patagonia, where they truly believe that they create products which give back to the earth more than they take from the earth. And guess what they recently did, which was the boldest move? Exactly, and they made Earth their only shareholder. How cool is that? How vulnerable is that? Nobody had ever done it before. Is it going to work? Don't know, but he bet the farm on it. Closer home, we had experience working with Kamesh Goyal, who started up India's first digital insurance company. And when he was starting, he wanted to create insurance products that he would buy for his own mother. He wanted it to be so simple that even children could understand, teenagers could understand insurance. Was he insane, trying to be simple in a very complex and regulated category? No, they made simplicity the core of the brand. And if you go on the Digit website now, everything that the brand does, from the call center to the one-page insurance, all embraces simplicity. This was a very bold move, by the way, but one that has paid off. Because guess what? In a very, very crowded and competitive insurance category, in 6 years' time, they have 4.5% market share, no easy feat. And that's because they had the courage to embrace a promise and operationalize it at every level. I'm a huge fan of Satya Nadella's. Has anyone read Hit Refresh? Fantastic book. He's so vulnerable as a leader. He shared his own personal experiences and struggles, and that fostered a vulnerable culture at Microsoft. And in fact, when he took over and started the transformation, he redefined the purpose of Microsoft to be empowering every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. This wasn't just something on paper. What did it do? It actually led to open source. It led to collaboration with even a hitherto enemy. Everybody knows who that is. And a diverse ecosystem. Could never have been possible if Satya Nadella hadn't been vulnerable enough to define his brand purpose the way it has been, and to put people at the center of this transformation and have a supportive culture to drive the changes that he needed to drive. So when it comes to you in this first way of deploying vulnerability, how can you start to think about it? Have you as a company defined your reason to exist beyond making money? Can everyone at the company get excited about the purpose and articulate it? Are they waking up in the morning and getting ready to either go to their laptop or come to work, as the case may be? And how can it become your North Star? Amit Jain again referenced it, how after L'Oreal defined their brand purpose, it has truly driven everything that they do at every level of the organization. Is it driving both actions and expressions of your brand? So that was the first way in which to deploy vulnerability. The second, and for me the most interesting one, lots of you are leaders here, is to embed vulnerability deeply in the organizational culture. As we all know, culture is the new brand currency, and culture is not snooker tables or free food, the way Silicon Valley once portrayed it. It's really what the organization stands for and the way things happen in an organization. What are the behaviors that are truly rewarded and others that are killed? 56% of workers ranked a strong workplace culture as more important than salary. Do we believe that? It's changing with the newer generations, right? 75% of applicants can consider corporate culture before handing over their CVs. A lot more scrutiny, and this is coming from Glassdoor. So what does this mean from a purpose of vulnerability? At Landor Fitch, we believe that the brand can be a catalyst for transformation of the organization. They're not two separate things. Brand and culture go hand in hand. And what you need to do is to have a brand-led people proposition and activations that drive new behaviors over time. Because ultimately, it's about behavior change that will drive the transformation to be more successful or not. Gucci actually recognized this. Imagine a very traditional luxury company reinventing itself, using transformation as a moment to reimagine the way they worked, putting power in the hands of every single Gucciite and inspiring them to give their best. A very hierarchical culture which was smashed to truly promote collaboration. They developed a people proposition and a campaign which put the humans of Gucci at the center and truly encouraged them to break free, to hold their truths, to not be afraid for being who they are, and to truly revolutionize whatever they were doing on behalf of the company. And they also activated the new behaviors that they want. This is a really cool example of the Gucci Observatory. So they actually trained their retail employees in anthropology so that they could observe customers coming into the store and feedback into headquarters, which then created more learning about customers from all across the organization. Covestro is a spin-off of Bayer, a large organization. 4,000 people needed a new home. They were no longer part of Bayer. A whole new culture based on collaboration, open doors. What did they do? They gave leaders screwdrivers to remove the doors, to truly have an open culture. They put these pink elephants everywhere to encourage employees to speak up when there was the elephant in the room. And they've also promoted a culture of fast failing, to not be afraid to fail. Right? These are the things that create vulnerability in the organization. My favorite example is Brian Chesky, who announced a couple of years ago, when all of us were still trying to figure it out, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, what do we really do? What did Airbnb do? They said, #work from anywhere. And actually, if you go on their website, they have a beautiful description of the design of work from anywhere. Even before it was proven, they said, we're going to do it because we know our employees need the same kind of flexibility that our customers are seeking. And by the way, 2 years after, their results have been phenomenal, and they're institutionalizing work from anywhere. But Brian Chesky and his team had the vulnerability to actually make that move. So here's how you can start to think about it. How can your people proposition, EVP sometimes we call it, stem from your brand purpose? So really connect the two to create a thriving culture. What are those activations? You know, I showed some of those examples. What are those things that you can do to drive and promote the behaviors that you want? And most importantly, before, marketing and HR never spoke to each other. But today, there are two sides of the same coin. They have to be fused together to create incredible value for the organization. Finally, the third way to deploy vulnerability is through boldness, bravery, in breakthrough innovations when it comes to the customer experience or the brand experience. To be clear, I'm not talking about painting the town red with your logos, right? We believe a great brand experience is born from the brand. It's not painted by the brand. Let me give you some inspiration. Did anybody read about the Lululemon dupe swaps? So basically, they were bold enough to have these pop-ups where you could go take your fake Lululemons and swap them in for the real ones. How daring is that? They experimented with this, and it shows the bravery and the courage of Lululemon. And actually, their sales of the Align yoga pant went up because people could feel the real difference of this product. Love for you to collaborate daringly as well. Many of you may have seen this on LinkedIn. Tiffany and Nike, LVMH, and Supreme. When two different forces come together, magic can truly happen. How about showing BTS moments daringly? Is this something that you've considered doing for your brand? GoPro really excels at that. And when you see those BTS moments, the authenticity, the realness with the brand, the connect goes up so much more. And of course, the Share a Coke was one of the first early campaigns that truly was brave in putting their customers and their stories up front and center. There's also a fun way to admit mistakes. By the way, when you are vulnerable, you will make mistakes. So do you have a mechanism to make up for those mistakes? This is an awesome example of Johnson & Johnson when OB tampons, a particular SKU was pulled off, and customers were really livid. And 65,000 of them gathered on Facebook and were complaining. And the company and brand found a way to customize an apology. They created a song for each individual. So whether it's Monica or Sunita or Tanya, each one got an email with a link to a YouTube song that was sung just for them, apologizing. And that created love for the brand. So when it comes to brand experience, what would we like you to think about? Which parts of your customer experience are most fertile for taking risks? What would you do if there were no negative consequences? And think about what the true cost of failure is for you or your organization. So to sum up, I've been talking a lot about vulnerability not being a weakness, but a strength. Because when you are vulnerable, you can be more authentic, you can build greater differentiation for your brands, and you engender trust. And by the way, all of these are characteristics of strong brands. And for those left-brained in the room, we know very clearly and definitively that strong brands beat the index, right? So if you look at the data all the way from 2006 to 2020, the index of strong brands outperforms the market index significantly. And what's most interesting is 2008 and 2020. You'll see the index dips less than the market index, the strong brands index, and when it goes up that much faster. That's the power of strong brands that are authentic, that are transparent, that build trust with customers. So finally, to conclude, if I hadn't said it too many times, let me say it one last time. Vulnerability is not your weakness, but perhaps your greatest strength. May the force be with you while you give it a go in your organization. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lulu. Thank you so very much. Thank you for the time and efforts that you've put into this remarkable keynote address. I now request Alina Gandhi, founder of Social Media Dissect, to kindly join us on the stage for a quick fireside chat with Lulu.
Are you going to ask me the piercing questions now? Yes.
Over to you, Alina. Let's welcome Alina with a huge round of applause, everyone.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I don't think we need this, yeah. There's one more there. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Alina Gandhi. I run an agency and a publishing house called Social Media Dissect. And without wasting any time, first of all, I have to mention that that was a great presentation. I think we all got a lot of insights from it. But I'm going to ask you some questions I have as a marketer and a company where we want to understand how to implement these vulnerability talks that you have shared with us. So my first question is that since we're talking about rethinking and rebuilding, how can marketing organizations really contribute, use this vulnerability to contribute in an organization internally?
As I said, I think the biggest opportunity is to make vulnerability the core of your culture. Why is culture important? Because culture attracts the best talent, nurtures their creativity, gives them psychological safety, and enables them to be their best selves, which means on behalf of the company, they can take risk, they can be more innovative, more brave, more courageous, more invested. And any leader would want employees who are invested their heart and soul into the company. When you're allowed to be seen for who you are, if you feel like you're included and you belong, then just the sky's the limit. That is the case for vulnerability.
Correct. I agree. I think 100%. But as young leaders that come into business, when we talk about vulnerability, there's also a lot of fear that is attached to it. Because like you said, there's chances that we may fail, that we will have criticism. So how can leaders in their organizations, have this overpowering attribute to get over this fear before we take a decision to be vulnerable?
Great question. Leaders are all ambitious. And I always remember Sanjeev Mehta, the Unilever CEO, who talks about the idea of humbition. So it's ambition coupled with humility. I think humility grounds us. It reminds us that we don't know all of the answers. We can be wrong. It's okay to make mistakes. It's about failing fast, it's about learning, and it's about constantly moving. And I think that requires a lot of self-awareness and coming down from this, sort of perch that you may be on of thinking of yourself as the greatest because you have become the leader. It's truly staying very, very grounded, staying close to the consumer, and constantly moving and being fearless with heavy, heavy, heavy doses of humility.
Correct. I think that leads me to the next question, which is, like you said, vulnerability can lead you to a lot of learning. Has there ever been an opportunity or a situation where you have been vulnerable and you have learned something that you would like to share with all of us today?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I have a pretty funny story, if you'll indulge me for a minute. About 10 years ago, my colleagues and I were flying from Bombay to Delhi. It was a winter morning. Our flight was delayed by over 3 hours, and it was the first big FMCG pitch in Delhi. And we thought we weren't going to make it. But luckily, after a couple of hours, the flight started boarding. And we were just at the tarmac. I was about to climb the stairs. My colleagues had already boarded. I could see them from the window. They were waiting for me to board. And guess what? Indigo deplaned me. Why? Because I'd lost my boarding pass. I started fighting with them. I'm like, I couldn't have come here without a boarding pass. I have my email confirmation. What do you mean you're deplaning me? Anyway, I looked at her and I said, I can't be the first idiot who has done this. Surely there's a precedent. She looked at me very calmly and she said, no, ma'am, you are the first idiot who has done this. So what's this lesson here? My colleagues went on. Our client director had never been in a pitch without me. This was the one opening she required to come out of a shadow. She won the pitch. She won many, many more projects after that, and she's one of our most successful client directors. She's an executive client director now. What was my learning? Sometimes as leaders, we can dominate, we can overshadow people, and talented people just need one opening to come on their own. That was such an eye-opener for me. I'm always now being on the side, shining the light on others and truly bringing out the potential because sometimes it's just hidden and they need an opportunity to shine. We tell this story many times in our company and people always laugh because it's funny. How the heck did you get deplaned? And by the way, when I went home, which is even funnier, the boarding pass was at the bottom of my handbag, which is the most ridiculous thing, right? Really idiotic behavior from a leader. But people also then say, wow, if a leader can talk like this and be vulnerable, so can we, and it's okay to make mistakes.
I think that's changing also a lot with younger, like you said, younger audiences coming in, a lot of Gen Z coming in. And I think that they are more accepting to organizations and brands that are more open and willing to talk about changes. So I think that's really great. And that's a fun story I'm going to repeat a lot more later. But I do want to talk about, there are a lot of challenges that you can have when you're being so vulnerable. And say you have taken a decision to do that. How do you get everybody to be open to it in your organization and also be like, this is a challenge we may have to overcome and this could go anyway if we're deciding to be so vulnerable out in the open?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is resistance to change. Nobody likes to change. Change is difficult. You can have all the change consultants in the world in your organization, but at the end of the day, if people don't buy into change with their hearts and souls, then that change is not going to happen. I think a big challenge is a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. A lot of us have fixed mindsets. We're not willing to try new ways. We're not open.
Correct.
And leaders who have leadership teams and people in the organization with very fixed mindsets find it difficult to drive transformation. The other part of it is collaboration. When you have silos, there are lots of people who have their fiefdoms and lots of power. And vulnerability, collaboration, they challenge traditional organizational structures. In fact, Amit Jain in the morning was talking about how in order to deliver a seamless customer experience, you've got to break silos. You have to put your ego aside and come together. That's very difficult to do.
Yes.
Ego gets in the way. So how do you leave your ego behind and collaborate to deliver a consumer-centric experience of the brand?
I think a great way that that comes ahead also is in the form of results. So when you see that you have done something with so much vulnerability, and so many brands and organizations have done that in the past, you see the results and you get more courage to maybe do that also, so we can help our employees talk about the same. But now that we've spoken about individuals and organizations, you did speak about brands being more open and vulnerable. But you know, in our industry, there are lots of brands that come with very stringent and very strict brand guidelines, right? How do we get them as marketers, how do we get them to understand that this is something you need to try, or this is something that you need to move away from in your brand guidelines to do so that you can excel? Because from personal experience, we work with a lot of Marriott hotels, and they have these very strict brand guidelines. And we got into social media where we're telling them that, you know, you need to actually try some fun stuff on social. And all of the brand managers would be like, but that's really not part of our brand guidelines. Or, you know, certain times we would tell them, use this influencer or use this trend that is happening. And it took years of us being able to tell them that, you know, you need to start accepting that maybe everything won't go according to your brand guidelines. So how do you think that brands can come in and be more open, and us as marketers be able to, you know, say that to them better?
So I think the world of brands is evolving. Brands used to be rigid structures. They were these cathedrals that you were building, and you just polished them. That was the job of brand management many, many years ago when some of us started in brand management. But that construct is dead. Today, brands are agile. They're constantly evolving. If you look at Nike, it's gone from shoes to an app to athleisure to what else. It's constantly reinvented itself, right? The meaning of Nike is much more an ideology or a philosophy. It's not just a product. Brand guidelines and the way brands are represented are evolving as well. It used to be an 800-page manual, and it was all about where the logo was and what the size of the font needed to be. But today, it's much more about a sandbox that you play in. It's about principles of the brand. I think what you said is a real challenge. I think you can't just respond to trends and funky things and do whatever you want. You have to find new ways of activating the brand that stay true to the meaning of the brand. So I think there is a job to be done in broadening the perspective of brand managers, that it's not just about logos and guidelines, but also inspiring agencies who work on the brand to create activations and expressions that are more related to the meaning of the brand. And so when those two come together, it can be quite synergistic.
Correct. I think one of the things that we did from our end is basically show data once we've tried one format and said that here's you know, data that says that your users are enjoying this more than if we did it the traditional way. So I think that was...
I think there's a lot of data to show if you focus on bringing joy and entertainment into the consumers' lives, the brands will have that much more relatability and connect.
Correct. So I think, Lulu, my last question would be on what is currently happening. And since we're talking about AI so much, or whether it's even crypto and metaverse that comes in, you really, as an organization, have to be very vulnerable and open to saying that we now need to leverage this new technology. So how can they leverage this technology while being open with, you know, brands being open, organizations being open to trying this out?
Experiment, experiment, experiment. There's no other way to do it. prototype what the possible solutions can be, get feedback from your consumers, iterate. If something blows up, then you know not to do it. But you can't not take that risk. So you've got to embrace it and use a design thinking mindset to test and then amplify.
Correct. I think I agree, and that we should be vulnerable enough to be open to new ideas as brands and organizations. So thank you so much for all your insightful information that you've shared with us today.
Thank you. I want to see a show of hands. Vulnerability fans? Now, a few more? Yay, awesome, job done.